A $10 billion dream just collapsed. India's massive lithium battery project, meant to rival China's dominance, has officially failed. The Chinese partner walked away, the factory sits incomplete, and now India's entire new energy strategy hangs in the balance. What really happened? Before we dive in, if you appreciate in-depth analysis like this, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our coverage of the stories shaping our world. The race to control the future of energy is heating up, and at the center of it all is one critical component: lithium-ion batteries. They power our phones, our laptops, our electric cars, and increasingly, entire national energy grids. Whoever masters battery manufacturing doesn't just win a market, they secure influence over the global economy for decades to come. India understood this. The country's leadership saw an opportunity to leapfrog into the future, building not just factories, but an entire ecosystem around clean energy and electric mobility. The vision was ambitious: a fully integrated domestic supply chain, from raw materials to finished battery packs, capable of supporting millions of electric vehicles and nationwide energy storage infrastructure. The centerpiece of this vision was a colossal investment, $10 billion, earmarked for creating a national-scale lithium battery manufacturing hub. If successful, it would have positioned India as a serious competitor in a sector currently dominated by China, Japan, and South Korea. Mass production was scheduled to begin in 2026, with the goal of energizing India's electric vehicle revolution and securing the nation's energy independence. But that plan has now officially unraveled. According to reports from Indian media outlets, the project has been declared a failure, and the finger-pointing has begun. Almost universally, blame is being directed at one unexpected turn of events: the sudden withdrawal of a Chinese technology partner. Without that crucial partnership, the entire foundation of the project crumbled. So what went wrong? Why did China pull out of this massive collaboration? And what does this failure reveal about India's broader ambitions to become the world's next manufacturing superpower? To understand the significance of this setback, we need to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. India is no longer just a developing economy on the sidelines. With a population now exceeding 1.4 billion people, it has officially become the most populous nation on Earth. That demographic reality brings with it something incredibly valuable: a massive youthful workforce and a rapidly expanding consumer market hungry for goods and services. For years, global analysts have been asking the same question: who will be the next China? Which country can replicate the manufacturing miracle that turned China into the world's factory over the past 3 decades? India has emerged as the leading candidate. Its advantages are clear. Labor is abundant and relatively affordable. Domestic demand is growing at a pace few other nations can match. Infrastructure, while still developing, is improving year by year. And perhaps most importantly, there's political will at the highest levels to make manufacturing a national priority. In 2022, the Indian government unveiled a sweeping initiative designed to accelerate this transformation. It's called the Production Linked Incentive Scheme, or PLI. The concept is straightforward but powerful. The more you manufacture and sell within India, the more cash subsidies the government gives you. It's a direct financial incentive to move production into the country and scale up operations. The policy doesn't just target 1 or 2 industries. It spans across electronics, batteries, solar panels, automobiles, electric vehicles, and semiconductors, essentially the sectors that will define the global economy of the 21st century. These are industries where supply chains are shifting, where technology is advancing rapidly, and where first-mover advantages can translate into long-term dominance. India's strategy is clear: attract multinational corporations, encourage domestic giants to invest heavily, and build industrial capacity that can eventually rival or even replace China's. To sweeten the deal even further, the government allocated approximately 180 billion rupees, roughly $2.4 billion, in subsidies specifically for companies investing in the new energy sector. That's not a small figure. It signals serious intent, and some of India's biggest corporate players took notice. At the forefront of this industrial push is Reliance Industries, one of the most powerful and well-connected conglomerates in India. If you're not familiar with Reliance, think of it as a sprawling empire with interests in petrochemicals, telecommunications, retail, and increasingly, clean energy. In 2024, the company's market capitalization surpassed $190 billion, placing it among the most valuable corporations in the country. It's not just big, it's influential, with deep ties to government policy and a track record of executing large-scale infrastructure projects. For decades, Reliance made its fortune in oil refining and petrochemicals. But in recent years, the company's leadership has signaled a major pivot. Mukesh Ambani, the chairman and one of the richest individuals in Asia, has publicly committed to transforming Reliance into a green energy powerhouse. In 2021, during the company's annual shareholder meeting, Ambani made a dramatic announcement. Reliance would invest more than $10 billion over the coming years to construct 4 massive manufacturing facilities in India. These wouldn't be ordinary factories. They would be what he called super factories, integrated complexes capable of producing solar panels, batteries, green hydrogen, and electrolyzers all under one industrial umbrella. The announcement sent ripples through the global business community. For the first time, an Indian company was making a credible, large-scale bet on competing directly with Chinese manufacturers in the new energy space. It was a bold statement of intent. 2 locations were selected for these mega-projects, Gujarat and Maharashtra, both states with strong industrial bases and government support. But the crown jewel of this plan was a sprawling industrial park in Jamnagar, a city in Gujarat that already hosts one of the world's largest oil refineries. The Jamnagar complex wasn't just about batteries. It was envisioned as a full ecosystem: solar module production, hydrogen generation, electrolyzer manufacturing, and yes, lithium-ion battery cells. The goal was vertical integration, controlling every step of the value chain from raw materials to finished products. Now here's an important clarification. When international media began referring to India's first super battery factory, they were being somewhat imprecise. What Reliance was building in Jamnagar wasn't a single battery plant. It was a cluster of production lines spread across a vast industrial campus, with battery cell manufacturing representing just one portion of the total investment. Still, that battery segment was critical. According to the original timeline, production of lithium-ion cells was scheduled to begin around 2026. The initial capacity was set at roughly 40 gigawatt-hours per year, with plans to scale up modularly to 100 gigawatt-hours as demand increased. To put that in perspective, 100 gigawatt-hours is enough to power approximately 2 million electric vehicles annually. It's a scale that would have made India a meaningful player in global battery supply chains overnight. The project was seen as a litmus test. If Reliance could pull this off, it would prove that India had the capability, the capital, and the commitment to compete in high-tech manufacturing. It would validate the government's PLI scheme. It would attract other investors. It would, in short, be a game changer. But as we now know, things didn't go according to plan. Here's the uncomfortable truth that Reliance and the Indian government had to confront. Having money and ambition is not enough. Reliance Industries is definitely not short on capital. It has access to cheap financing, government support, and a vast network of contractors and suppliers. Building physical infrastructure, pouring concrete, erecting steel frames, installing clean rooms, none of that is the bottleneck. The real challenge is technology, specifically the know-how required to manufacture lithium-ion battery cells at scale with high yields, consistent quality, and competitive costs. This is not something you can simply buy off the shelf. It's the result of decades of research, trial and error, process optimization, and accumulated institutional knowledge. And when you look at which countries have truly mastered this, the list is very short. China stands alone at the top. Over the past 20 years, Chinese companies like CATL, BYD, and others have built an unmatched industrial ecosystem for electric vehicles and batteries. They control not just the manufacturing, but the entire supply chain, from mining and refining raw materials, to producing battery components, to final assembly and system integration. In 2023, China exported approximately 1.2 million electric vehicles, ranking first globally. Its domestic battery production exceeded 600 gigawatt-hours, accounting for more than three-quarters of the world's total output. These aren't just impressive numbers. They represent a structural advantage that took decades to build and is incredibly difficult to replicate. So when Reliance realized it didn't have the technical expertise to produce battery cells on its own, the company did what many others in similar positions have done. It looked to China. Reliance began reaching out to multiple Chinese battery manufacturers, hoping to license proven cell technologies and production processes. After months of discussions, the company settled on a partner, a Chinese firm called Ziding Energy Storage. By May 2023, negotiations were in the final stages. The two sides had agreed on the broad terms of a technology transfer deal. Contracts were being drafted. Timelines were being finalized. Everything seemed to be on track. All that remained was the formal signing. And then, in October 2023, everything changed. That month, the Chinese government announced a new set of export control regulations. The policy was sweeping and deliberate. It imposed strict restrictions on the export of certain materials and technologies related to lithium batteries. Specifically, the controls covered artificial graphite anode materials, which are critical for battery performance, as well as the equipment and processes used to produce them. Additionally, key manufacturing equipment for battery cell production was also placed under export control. What this meant in practice was clear. Chinese companies could no longer freely transfer core battery technologies to foreign partners without obtaining official government approval. The intention was to protect China's competitive edge in the new energy sector and prevent the leakage of critical industrial know-how to potential rivals. For Ziding Energy Storage, the timing couldn't have been worse. The company now faced significant compliance risks. Proceeding with the Reliance deal could potentially violate the new regulations, exposing the firm to penalties, reputational damage, or worse. Faced with this uncertainty, Ziding made the only rational choice. It withdrew from the partnership. The decision was sudden, but not surprising. From China's perspective, the logic was straightforward. Why help a competitor build capacity that could one day challenge Chinese dominance? Why transfer hard-won technological advantages to a country that is actively trying to reduce its dependence on Chinese manufacturing? For Reliance, the withdrawal was devastating. Without access to Chinese battery cell technology, the entire foundation of the Jamnagar project began to crumble. Reliance scrambled to find alternatives. The company publicly stated that it would refocus the project on energy storage system assembly rather than cell manufacturing. In other words, it would import finished battery cells from overseas and assemble them into larger systems for grid storage or commercial applications. On the surface, this sounds like a reasonable pivot. Energy storage is a growing market, and India does need more capacity. But in reality, it's a massive downgrade. Battery cell production is where the real value lies. It's the core technology, the heart of the entire industry. Cells account for roughly 70 to 80% of the total cost of a battery pack. Without the ability to produce cells domestically, you're stuck at the low end of the value chain. Assembly, packaging, integration. These are important steps, but they're also low-margin activities that can be easily replicated. Essentially, Reliance was left doing the industrial equivalent of putting together furniture from IKEA rather than designing and manufacturing the furniture itself. Industry insiders were blunt in their assessments. Without cell manufacturing, the so-called super factory was little more than an empty shell. The $10 billion vision had been reduced to a fraction of its original ambition. By January 2026, Reliance Industries made it official. The company announced that it would suspend the core lithium battery cell manufacturing segment of the project. The super factory, once heralded as a symbol of India's new energy future, had entered a state of indefinite limbo. The $10 billion earmarked for the project was now under reassessment. Some of it would still be spent on other parts of the industrial complex, solar panels, hydrogen production, but the battery dream was effectively dead, and Reliance wasn't alone. Other major Indian conglomerates had also announced ambitious new energy plans with great fanfare. The Adani Group, another industrial titan, had pledged to invest billions in solar manufacturing and battery production. JSW Group, a major player in steel and infrastructure, had similar plans, but almost all of them hit the same wall: technology transfer. Without access to proven, scalable production processes, these projects couldn't move forward, and as Chinese companies became unwilling or unable to share their know-how, the door began to close. So the obvious question arises: why not turn to Japan or South Korea, or even Europe? On paper, Japan and South Korea are excellent alternatives. Both countries have deep expertise in battery technology. Japan's Toyota has made significant progress in solid-state battery research, a next-generation technology that could, really revolutionize the industry. South Korea's Samsung and LG have built some of the most advanced, highly automated battery production lines in the world. These are world-class companies with world-class capabilities, but there's a problem: cost. Japanese and South Korean battery technologies are built for high-end markets in developed economies. They're optimized for precision, performance, and reliability, often at the expense of affordability. Labor costs in these countries are high. Automation is extensive. Quality standards are, exacting. All of this translates into expensive technology licenses and high operational costs. When Indian companies have approached Japanese and South Korean firms for technology transfer, the licensing fees quoted have often been 2 to 3 times higher than what Chinese companies were offering. Ongoing operational and maintenance costs can be 30 to 40% more expensive as well. For a price-sensitive market like India, this is a deal-breaker. Here's why. If battery costs go up by even a small percentage, that increase gets magnified across the entire supply chain. More expensive batteries mean more expensive electric vehicles. Higher vehicle prices mean lower sales. Lower sales mean you can't achieve economies of scale. And without scale, costs stay high. It's a vicious cycle. If India were to pay upfront licensing fees approaching $30 billion for cutting-edge Japanese or Korean technology, the entire industrial model would collapse under its own weight. The math simply doesn't work. So despite having mature, advanced technologies, Japan and South Korea have remained off the table for India's mass-market ambitions. What about Europe? After all, Europe is home to some of the world's most iconic automotive brands: Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes-Benz. Surely they have the expertise to help India build a battery industry? Well, not exactly. Europe is indeed trying to build its own battery manufacturing capacity. Governments have announced subsidies. Industrial alliances have been formed. Major investment plans have been unveiled. Germany, for example, allocated roughly $1 billion in state aid to support domestic battery production. Sweden followed suit with subsidies under its social climate plan. But here's the reality. Most European battery projects are still in the pilot phase. They're running small-scale test production, working out technical kinks, and trying to ramp up to commercial viability. Very few have achieved true mass production with the kind of stable, high-yield output that India needs. And the core bottleneck is the same: raw materials. Approximately 60% of the world's lithium refining capacity is controlled by China. Around 73% of cobalt refining is in Chinese hands. and nearly 90% of graphite processing, critical for battery anodes, is concentrated in China. So even if a European company has a brilliant battery design and an efficient production process, they're still dependent on China for the essential materials that go into every cell. This dependency extends across the entire value chain, from upstream resource processing to midstream material manufacturing to downstream vehicle assembly and energy storage systems. China has built a tightly integrated, almost closed-loop industrial ecosystem. Europe, the United States, and India all remain reliant on China for critical inputs. And that dependence is not easy to break. But there's another issue that's been quietly eroding India's appeal as an investment destination: unpredictability. Between 2014 and 2018, India experienced a wave of foreign investment, particularly from Chinese smartphone manufacturers. Companies like Xiaomi, Oppo, Vivo, and others set up large-scale production facilities, creating jobs and contributing to India's electronics manufacturing boom. But by 2021, the mood had shifted. The Indian government began launching aggressive tax investigations into Chinese-funded companies. Some executives were barred from leaving the country. Some firms were hit with massive retroactive tax bills. In several cases, companies were forced to exit the Indian market entirely. Now, it's important to note that this kind of retroactive enforcement isn't limited to Chinese firms. In 2012, the Indian government pursued Vodafone for back taxes, demanding roughly $3 billion. In 2024, Samsung was hit with a surprise tariff collection of about $600 million based on alleged historical filing discrepancies. These incidents have had a chilling effect on investor confidence. If you're a multinational corporation considering a multi-billion-dollar investment in India, these stories matter. They raise uncomfortable questions. Will the rules change after I've already committed capital? Will I face unexpected tax liabilities years down the line? Can I trust the legal and regulatory framework? For India to successfully build a world-class manufacturing sector, it needs to address these concerns. Tax policies need to be clearer. Enforcement needs to be more predictable. Foreign investors need to feel that their capital is secure. Without that trust, more companies will hesitate, and some will choose to invest elsewhere. So where does this leave India? The collapse of the $10 billion lithium battery project is more than just a corporate setback. It's a symbol of the enormous challenges facing any country that wants to compete with China in advanced manufacturing. China didn't build its dominance overnight. It took decades of strategic planning, massive state investment, relentless focus on industrial policy, and the accumulation of expertise across every layer of the supply chain. That advantage is not easily replicated. India has ambition, it has capital, it has a massive workforce. But ambition and capital alone are not enough. You need technology. You need raw materials. You need a stable, predictable investment climate. And you need time. The failure of this project should serve as a wake-up call. If India is serious about becoming a manufacturing superpower, it will need to make hard choices. It will need to invest not just in factories, but in research and development. It will need to build domestic supply chains for critical materials. It will need to reform its regulatory environment to inspire confidence among foreign investors. Most importantly, it will need to recognize that there are no shortcuts. The race to control the future of energy is far from over. But for now, China remains firmly in the lead, and the gap is not closing as quickly as many had hoped. What do you think? Can India still catch up? Or has the window of opportunity already closed? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this analysis valuable, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our future deep dives into the stories shaping the global economy. Until next time.